Shalom, I'm Joel Blackford with Blackford Talks Prophecy. I'm really excited tonight because things are going crazy in the ET world, the UFO world, the angels and demons world. Every article right now that I'm reading is about that, and I have an expert with us today, so I get to bring him on with us. Gary Wayne will be our guest tonight. Oh goodness, Gary, there you go. I wanted to get you on more of a full screen. So Gary Wayne will be our guest tonight. He's been doing this for 20, 30 years? No, 45 years total in faith, but how many years doing this type Genesis 6 stuff?
Well, just doing podcasts I've been doing for 10 years now. So,
Okay.
yeah, and the book came out 10 years ago. First book came out 10 years ago. So that's when I decided I needed to be active on social media and learn how to do podcasts.
Yes. I was just out on your website I'm blanking on the name of your company right now that does the publishing out of Oregon.
Yeah, Deep
And
River.
Deep River, yeah. You were the first book listed there, so that was kind of cool.
Yeah, I've been a good, consistent customer over the years, and I'm quite loyal to Bill, and he's the co-author on the Opprimo Conspiracy. He's the
Oh, that's
novelist
his
aspect.
connection. So the new book
Yeah,
that we're talking about, the Opprimo Conspiracy, is working with him. Okay, good.
yeah, and he wanted to take my research mainstream, and how you do that is you do that through the nonfiction. I
Right.
mean, through the fiction market versus the nonfiction market, because it's a lot larger market. So we've been collaborating on that. But what was interesting is my first publisher went bankrupt, and then
Oh,
one of the employees went, and my book was just about to come out, like 30
okay.
days from release, and he went
Right.
bankrupt. And then the one of the employees of the original publisher, he got a job at Deep River right away because people
Yeah.
were looking at the employees and stuff pretty quick on that. And
Yep.
he convinced Bill to have a look at my book. And when I
Yeah.
talked to him, he said, this is not in our genre whatsoever.
Right.
But our fellow that we brought over from the other publishing company, he is so hot on getting this book out. Maybe we'll do it, but now we're gonna have to put it through all of our processes in editing and stuff like that. So I had to go through a whole new publishing sort of process from design and everything up. So, and I don't think they actually expected it to do much, but he thought, it's an interesting topic, so let's get it out there and see whether we get a little bit diversity on it. And it didn't do very well in the first 6 months to the year because, I
Okay.
mean, it was way out there for its time. But every year, book one has increased in sales
Okay.
and continues to increase in sales even this last year, and is on pace to increase last year's sales. So it gets a larger reach on the market and has had very strong staying power. And then book two is selling very well. It's been out for a couple of years, and then we released the Opprimo Conspiracy, AI's Covenant with Babylon, April 1,
Right.
and
So
that's
you're
out on
fresh with
Kindle.
that.
Yeah,
Eh,
that's out with Kindle. And here's the people just
Yeah,
want to see
sure.
it. I know it was up on
It's
the
backwards,
screen.
but don't worry, they can see
Yeah,
it.
okay.
Yep.
Yeah. And so it's out on Kindle and written copy, and the Audible is being worked on right now. We've got all the voices, and I listened to the first three chapters of it earlier today and said, okay, yeah, I think we're good to go. And so that'll be out within 30 days, hopefully.
Wonderful. I wrote a book back in 2010 and I published it by 2012. And that publisher was shifting their work from American workers to Indian workers. It was Christian. It was horrible. They said they were Christian. They weren't Christian. They were making money. And it was the most horrible experience because I would write something, hand it off to them, and then it would come back and I'd find out that person was gone. The new person was in. They lost all of my information. Oh, it was just, oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And also, you are a nonfiction writer,
Yeah.
and this is fiction. And I wrote my first book as nonfiction, and then I realized this is trash. So I rewrote it as fiction, realizing you can take more risks with fiction.
Well, and you don't have to be right all the time.
Right.
Because that's what fiction is all about, and that's one of the things Bill was saying. He said, remember, it's fiction, Gary. Yeah, but we got
Yeah.
to have that. And then you go, Gary, it's fiction.
Right.
And
Right.
it's no, there's certain things we can have license on, and there's certain things we can't. So, and so we wanted to be very, very disciplined with the eschatological line that I use in terms of the chronology of events in the end time,
Okay. Yep.
and making sure that we weren't contradicting scripture in any sort of way. So that's
You
more,
realize that's a dogfight, Gary. Come
yeah,
on.
it
I
is.
mean,
It is. And which is why I insisted it has to be my approach, not the hundreds of other ones that might be out there.
are you
And
willing to tell us your approach at all, or is that going to get you in trouble with some viewers?
oh no, no, I'm quite open on what my approach is. So it's all sort of part of the discussion, right? So people want to know
Okay.
certain things. And so my approach is not a standard approach.
Okay.
The problem with
Let's hear it.
problem with standard approaches is they all work from a preconceived conclusion on specific events.
Okay.
So I don't want to be tied to that. I want to be tied to what Jesus said. And everybody
Okay.
says they put everything around what Jesus said, except that they don't. And they like to rewrite what Jesus said a lot, or they like to leave out inconvenient passages, or they like to rewrite passages to make things fit. All of
Okay.
that doesn't work for me. My standard is all passages have to fit together, and everything's going to be defined within the Bible. We don't have to use polytheism to define monotheism, as what a lot of approaches will tend to do at times,
Sure. Yep.
unfortunately. And what's unique is that Jesus provided us a chronology. And he laid it down in a template in Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 17, and Luke 21. So all you have to do with that template is do a couple of things. One is put the additional details on that from Mark and Luke, because there are things that Matthew doesn't have, but I think
Sure.
it's the best template. And understand it doesn't go to Armageddon. It goes to the gathering of the elect. Doesn't matter
Well,
who
that's
you
what
think.
we're aiming for. We're not really
Yes.
aiming for
Yeah.
Armageddon. That doesn't sound like fun to me, unless
Yeah.
you like birds eating people, you know.
Yeah.
I'd
So
rather be gathered.
yeah, so that's the first step. The second step is you have to listen to what Jesus said to do the next steps, which is go to Daniel next.
Oh,
And he instructs, in Matthew 24, using the template 15 to 20 on the
sure.
passages, when you see somebody standing where he ought not to be standing,
Okay.
and then he's telling us to learn about Daniel, and that includes Daniel 2, Daniel 7, Daniel 8, Daniel 9, Daniel 11, and Daniel 12. And all of a sudden, now you're going to understand what happened in the 3.5 years before the abomination, and you get the full 3.5 years worth of details between Daniel 11, um, 31 to 45 after, and you'll get details of the rise of Antichrist from 21 to 31 in
Sure.
Daniel 11.
Oh, you go
And
all the way back to 21.
yeah, for the
Okay.
rise,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
the
Wonderful.
first three
Good
and a
for
half
you.
years. Yeah.
Not many
And
people do that.
well, because they've got a preconceived conclusion that they're wanting to wash Daniel 11 away and say, well, let's backdate that to the abomination in 200 BC by
Okay.
Antiochus, which Jesus would not be referring to something that's already happened. So, but they
Okay.
have to rewrite that. But if you look at those first details, it makes sense with between 21 and 31. It makes sense because in Daniel 7, Antichrist as the little horn, as he's described, particularly in Daniel 8 as the little horn, but in Daniel 7, he rises amongst the 10 horns, the 10 kings, right? So he rises
Yep.
after
Yep.
and comes to power at the midpoint. So there has to be some details there. And the Daniel 12 will give you a little bit more detail on the last half as well, some additional information. But once you've got that in place and understanding you're not at Armageddon, you're at some time after the abomination or just after where Matthew 24 ends, and understand there is not one single detail in the four gospels in terms of the chronology that will actually discuss wrath or war or horses or swords or anything to do with Armageddon. It's all about reward and salvation. So you want to be very careful not to insert details that aren't there. So now when you go to Revelation, which is the next step, and understand
Yep.
that Revelation is from Jesus, that in a vision type prophecy that he gave the
Sure.
angel to show John. So it cannot contradict with what Jesus set down in the four gospels. But if you use that template and you already have the Daniel aspects, now you can look at any part of Revelation 6 to Revelation 14
Okay.
6 for the first 3.5 years. You're going to get a summary of the events from Revelation 14 7 forward of the
Wow.
last 3.5 years. And
Yeah.
then you get the
Yeah.
details of that you put around in Revelation 17, 18, and 19. And if you want to know, well, what are you doing with Revelation 1 to 6? Well, deal with that, but understand that's dealing with the churches.
Okay.
And there's in each of those letters, there are one unfulfilled prophecy, like Revelation 3:10 and 2:10 for two quick
Sure.
examples. 10 days of tribulation
Yeah.
and the hour of temptation and trial that comes across the whole world that will be saved from. So each of those churches have one of those types of prophecies, but where you learn to go to understand Revelation 1 through the beginning of 6 is go to Zechariah 1 through 6. And all of
Yes,
a sudden
absolutely.
things
The
start to make
horses are there
sense.
in 1 and 6. So yes, why not
Yeah,
cite the horses?
and pretty much everything in between is about the throne room, right? So
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
it
In
just gives
odd
you
ways. I mean,
context.
I
Yeah.
don't know why they're measuring the throne room in chapter 2, and you've got the olive oil. We'll call them the two
Yeah.
witnesses in 4, but there they are.
Yep.
And it matches with
But it foreshadows the two witnesses for Revelation, right?
Yes, yeah,
So
absolutely.
again, it's useful to understand things in terms of the allegories and beings that are being sort of talked about. And then, after that, I mean, it's pretty easy. You have the millennium, then you have eternity.
Yeah,
It's pretty much in chronological order. You have to understand that there's a lot of details there, which is why you want to fit them in with what you already have down with what Jesus provided in the four gospels and Daniel. And then you can start
yeah,
picking any other Old Testament passages you want. I usually like to go to Jeremiah for second Exodus prophecies and the rest of the prophecies in there, and Isaiah for those second Exodus
okay,
prophecies, because that
sure.
fills in a lot more of the last 3.5 years, right?
So, are you kind of a Torah scholar too? So
Yes.
you read the first 5 books then
Oh,
quite well?
yes. And take it right back to the Hebrew.
Oh, you do. You're a Hebrew guy. Good for you.
Yes. And a Greek guy.
And a great guy. Oh, well, then I love you because that's
Uh,
exactly what I do. I try to work the Hebrew and the Greek together and say, what
yeah.
does it actually mean? So, yeah. Have
Yeah.
you
Because,
ever seen this, which is, I'll show you a couple of different books here. They're backwards, so I'm sorry.
yeah.
Oh, goodness. Where's the other one? Here it is. So, this is the Hebrew Revelation. Whoa, there it is right there. Hebrew Revelation from Van Rensing. He is, I'm not sure who he is, but and then this is from Dr. Miles Jones. So it's
Yep.
another version of the Hebrew Revelation. Have you ever dug through either one of those?
No, but I've read books from the Hebrew perspective, several on them,
Okay,
but not
sure.
specifically those two. And I find it very helpful to get into the shoes of the Northern Kingdom and the Southern Kingdom, how they would and will understand things in the end time. But Revelation is so unique because it completes with the supper of the Lamb that's going to bring in on parallel tracks the Christian body as the bride, as well as Israel, the lost tribes who are called by name in the end time, and the visible tribes of the southern kingdom we know as Judah today, or Israel, the people of Israel, that they're going to be brought back in as well. So it starts to help you understand some of the events Jesus is talking about and what in both the Gospels and in Revelation. And it just sort of just fits perfectly in understanding some of the crossovers, because you would have like a word like Sarah in Hebrew for persecution or trouble, as in Jacob's trouble or the trouble in
Sure.
Daniel 12, right?
Right.
And it would be nice if the New Testament was in Hebrew, because then we could look at a word that would be the same for that. But of
Oh,
course,
yeah.
it's in
Well, there it
Greek.
is. Yeah.
Yes. So we get thalipses, which is the cognate word
Yes.
for Sarah. And now we can start to link. So particularly if we, and just one quick example, because I
Yeah.
get too
Yeah.
nerdy on the
Please.
minutiae here,
Oh, that's
is that
great. We love
if you
that.
want to look at the timing of Revelation 3:10, now you have some cross references you can use quickly. So
Okay.
Revelation 3:10 is the hour of temptation and that we're going to be saved from, and also the trial of the entire world. Something
Sure.
significant is happening after we're saved, immediately after.
Sure.
So now if you go to Matthew 24:21,
Okay.
you're going to have tribulation there, the time of the great tribulation that is going to take place, that hasn't, we haven't seen anything like it since creation.
Right.
And so Mark 13:19, which is the cognate passage there in the KJV, it's not tribulation, it says affliction. But of course, it's the same Hebrew word, thalipses.
Right.
So now we have a timing that seems to fit what's going on with Revelation 3:10. And now in the Old Testament, we could go to the time of Jacob's trouble,
Yep.
Sarah, which is now the word is going to happen sometime after the abomination, and Daniel 12:1 through 2, where you're going to have a unique resurrection for Israel and Daniel's people, and a time of troubles not seen since the creation of nations.
Right.
And then you might as well line up, Ezekiel 37 and Isaiah 26 with the resurrection for the Israelite and Judean resurrection that's going to happen after rapture.
Okay. Interesting. So you are a rapture guy.
Yes.
Pre-trib rapture. I did not pick that up during our
I'm not
discussion.
I'm not pre-trib.
Oh, you're not pre-trib, but
I am
you're
not. I used to be.
okay. Okay. When did you flip? How many years ago?
Oh, probably 20 years ago.
Okay,
25.
that's about the
Yeah.
same time I did. Yep.
Yeah. So, and the reason why I was pre-trib was I hadn't gotten deep enough yet into the prophetic side, right?
Right.
So I got into prophecy, and then by inference, and as a result, prehistory through the giants, because I took a challenge to read a book, which was by Hal Lindsey in about 1980 or 81, and it was
Sure.
called The Late Great Planet Earth. And it
Right.
scared the socks off of me. So I wanted to learn about it. And I read everything that Hal wrote, because he was a prolific writer back then
Oh,
and
yeah.
continued to be. And so he was pre-trib. So I just thought, okay, well,
Yeah.
I don't have anything that I can. But the more I did the research, the more I realized that creates too many contradictions. And now you have to start rewriting scripture. And I don't feel comfortable in doing that. And so at some point in time, I just said, I just can't make that time frame work. And then I realized, there isn't one passage in the whole Bible that says rapture occurs before the last 7 years. Not one. So we don't have a hard scripture to go to. And so just little things like that. And then the more I understood that there was a different timing to that, and then I listened to, I said, well, might as well go with what Jesus said, because he's the spirit of
Oh, yeah.
prophecy. Things just sort of clicked. And then from there, I went right on my own, and I just started to assemble everything. And I didn't have any contradictions after that.
And your publishing company is okay with you being post-trib or whatever, mid-trib or anything other than pre-trib?
Yeah, just after, yeah. Well, yeah, and Bill was for years, because he didn't really dig deep into it. He was
Right.
pre-trip,
Yep.
and so just for the same reasons as most, you accept the talking points.
Sure.
But
They're good people. We love the pre-tribbers. I mean, they're dear, sweet people. They mean well, but they aren't digging. If you're
yeah,
digging, you're not going to find the right answers.
yeah,
You know.
exactly. So, and the good thing though is most people in the prophetic side agree there's a rapture. There's a group
Sure.
out
Yeah.
there that doesn't agree with it, but that's that they can do that. And so it's the timing shouldn't be the faith issue. So
I would say if
it's
if
one
if you're
event.
yeah, if
It's a
you're
big
more
event.
faithful,
Yeah.
then you don't care about the time. You're just constantly working,
Yeah.
spreading the
So
gospel.
so what I generally like to do is lead out when I talk about timing of rapture and say, look, my perspective is, you know, I pray for a pre-trib rapture, but I prepare for a later rapture.
That's what we say. Yes, yes.
Yes.
Let me throw this one at you real quick because Darren Katz here is part of the group and he's watching tonight. And so he is a Cohen. He's actually, a legitimate Cohen,
Yep.
Katz. And he is Jewish, of course, but he's also, publishing and working on these things. And I believe that something has to occur in terms of a priesthood at some point in time. And it can't just be a Jewish priesthood in terms of not unbelievers, so to speak. So you would think that there would be something for people like Darren and others that are Cohens to do, either in the Melchizedek priesthood or in the Zadok type priesthood. Any comments there?
Yeah. Are you looking for a time frame before the
Mm,
last 7 years or after the last seven
I would
years would
say
be?
as the logistics occur, you're kind
Yeah.
of a timeline guy like I am. You would
Yep.
think there would be some activities that we would notice priest
Yes.
wise.
Yeah. I think as you have a preparation for events that would lead to the building of a wing on the existing temple of the Islamic temple there that probably would be going more towards the edge of this Kidron or Sidron Valley,
Okay.
is where the Holy of Holies would be located, at least according to the details that Josephus had stated where the Holy of Holies was at that time. And thinking as a Pharisee, he probably had pretty good understanding of where it was in the Second Temple. So I would say there's going to have to be events leading up for that to happen. And then, of course, in Daniel 9:27, they're going to be beginning the sacrifices on that wing overspreading
Oh yeah.
of the
Oh
temple,
yeah.
right? Or
Right.
extremity, however English translation you want to read to that. So that means they're going to be permitted to do that. So that's going to put in a position of a priesthood that is somehow working with the
Yeah.
New World Order and rising universal religion to some degree. And if you're going to have the Holy of Holies, you're going to have to dedicate that with a red heifer ceremony,
You have to.
right? You have to.
Yes.
That's all part of it.
That's
Then that's going to take that
biblical.
priesthood or
It's
something
also in
akin to it.
Hebrews 9. I mean, there it is, the red heifer. Well,
Yeah.
with the offering of I can't remember exactly how Hebrews phrases it, but it is the red heifer.
It
the
is. As you
sprinkling.
take that,
Yeah.
you take that back to the Greek and you put it up to the Numbers passage.
Yeah.
It's what they're talking about. That's the context
Exactly.
that defines it. So that means there's going to have to be some sort of resurgence of not just a Levite priesthood with more visibility, both in Jerusalem and around the world, because they're going to live in a privileged position, and they're going to be living in safety, according to Ezekiel 38 and 39, and growing
Yep.
rich, right? And they're also going to be taking people into the synagogues to charge them with probably things like blasphemy for people who are
So you're saying
preaching for the
Sanhedrin.
testimony of Jesus. Yeah.
You're saying Sanhedrin type stuff.
Yes, absolutely I am.
Okay.
And so all of this says that there's going to have to be a rise of a priesthood that is obviously not converted to Jesus as a Messiah at this point in time,
Right.
but will be in a very privileged position. And so one wonders about the tribe of Dan that
Right.
might be working to make that
They
covenant of
aren't
death,
mentioned in Revelation 7.
so to speak. Yeah, they're
Okay.
not.
Oh, you're going to Isaiah 28:15.
Yeah,
Okay. You're going
yeah.
covenant of death.
Both,
Okay.
both, absolutely. And I think
Okay.
that's part of the mix that is going to be going on.
Okay.
And so for Israel to be taking this, the southern kingdom would be more accurately as Judeans, if they're going to accept this,
Yeah.
their protection is going to be guaranteed.
Okay.
And there's going to have to be some sort of decimation of Islam that would permit it, or reduce so significant in power that they would permit that. And so the peace treaty is probably coming out of some sort of extension of the turmoil in the Middle East.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
would look for a significant showdown between the Sunnis and the Shia at some point in time. And I would put the Shias winning that battle based on, again,
Absolutely.
Ezekiel 38 and
We're seeing it
39.
right now.
Yeah. So it's just, and again, it's more the birth pangs or the sorrows that are leading up and putting those geopolitical pieces into place. And so expect that to get stronger. So yes, we should see that somehow rising up and then working with this universal religion.
Okay. So a couple of things here. Dan means judgment, judge, or judgment, and they are excluded from Revelation 7.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, because they have this association with Mount Hermon and Bashan, where some of the people moved to,
Oh, you're
even though their
going
land
there.
wasn't there. Oh,
You're
yeah.
saying
But
Dan went up to Mount Hermon. I did not
yeah,
know that.
yeah,
Okay. Okay.
you get that biblically. So, and so something is going to happen that is something sort of religious, because remember, God in the book of Exodus and the book of Numbers takes the firstborn as his redeemed,
Okay.
and he's going to save them. That's likely the ones that are going to be the 144,000.
Okay.
I'm speculating that, but it's that term redeemed that's
Well,
used for the
chapter 14.
144,000.
Yeah, chapter 14 says
First
first fruits,
fruits.
bikurim, or Oh goodness, I'm Rashith, but I'm blanking on the Greek term for that. But anyway,
Yeah.
it's there. Yeah.
So something is happening, and it's something with an association with the Baalim at Mount Hermon, at Mount Saphon, mountain of the north. So there has to be a religious sort of nature to that for them to be banned from that 100, from the
Okay.
12,000 representatives as the evangelists. And I think they, as you look at the historical aspect of it, I think they capitulated to sort of perpetual polytheism for the most
Okay.
part, through their interrelationship with Mount Hermon. And I think that they're going to be a big part of the rise of Babylon from within, and will be like this bridge to help make this deal with Antichrist, who likely negotiates the covenant, according to Daniel 9:27,
Yep.
and that they will use that as leverage to put themselves into that privileged position. But in spite of that, and right at the start, because you have to remember, and I know as you understand, is that the 144,000 have a 3.5 year commission that starts right after, by inference, because of the other 3.5 year numbers we get in Revelation for the last half.
Yeah.
And when that
Yeah.
happens, like with the rise of
Yeah.
Antichrist in Revelation 13, and Judea fleeing in Revelation 12 from the
Yep.
river spewed by the dragon after the
Sure. Yeah.
abomination to be protected for 3.5 years,
Yeah.
then they're going to be preaching right from the signing of that covenant,
Okay.
and with Babylon being an absolute power controlling the seven kings, that will probably come together with that covenant so Antichrist can rise amongst them in the first 3.5 years.
It's intriguing that your book is about Babylon and AI, and
Yep.
you're linking the two together. And so, I wasn't a big Babylon fan, and then I spent more time on it, and I realized, oh, it's totally connected through all the idolatry of all these years, and
Yes.
probably the Nephilim and things like that. Not much is stated in Genesis 10 or 11, but when you see and the end times in chapter 16, and you see these angels, they're in on the Euphrates River, and I tie it to Gilgamesh too. That obviously, somehow, some way, this Babylon story is going to come back up again. And
Yeah.
so, is that tied to your book at all? Your new book?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
and certainly tied into the research in books 1 and 2,
Sure.
where a lot of it sort of comes from. So Babylon is going to reside at the Septimontium.
What's
It,
that?
that's the seven ancient hills of Rome, like
Okay.
Palatine Hill and
Okay.
all the other ones. And and in the Opprimo Conspiracy, we're going to put the Great Temple of Babylon at Palatine.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Still
You
there?
you froze for a moment, and I'm
Okay.
not sure if it was me or you, but anyway, keep on
It,
going.
it
Yep.
blinked, yes.
Yeah,
So
blink.
they're going to establish their temple at Palatine Hill, I think, and we put that into the Opprimo Conspiracy. And this was the home of the Sibylline prophecies. And
Oh,
Vaticanus Hill was the branch hill in the Proto-Latin, in the Etruscan period of time. And so this is the seven hills established by Romulus and Remus, offspring of Ares and or Mars in the Roman pantheon. So,
so then you're kind of Jewish that way, in terms of, you're saying Edom is the Roman Catholic Church, right?
not really. They'll be part of it. I think.
Okay. Okay.
I think there's going to be a loyal conservative movement that parts as part of
Okay.
the falling away.
Okay.
That's talked about by Jesus and by Paul. And so I think there's a liberal component, just to pick two sort of terms, conservative and liberal, that will go with the Babylon movement. Just as I
Okay.
see
Okay.
a Judaic, polytheistic, Kabbalistic, Talmudic movement moving with the Babylon movement, just as I would have a polytheist Sufi mystical aspect of
Oh yeah.
Islam
Oh yeah.
moving
Oh
with the
yeah.
Babylon movement, because it's going to be an umbrella religion of the ancient religion. And the daughters of Babylon is the allegory for the religion of the beast empires
Okay.
that's talked about in the Old Testament. And so now we have the mother religion. And of course,
Okay.
Babylon, as you take that back in its definition in the New Testament, was not only an allegory for the city of Rome,
Oh,
um,
okay.
yeah, and for Paul said was likely writing from Babylon, Rome, so that they wouldn't know, sort of that Judaic Pesher code. I don't know whether the
Okay.
Christians actually called that, but certainly the Essenes certainly did.
Okay.
And so, and Babylon, it has an etymology as it's connected in the New Testament to the root word Babel of Nimrod
Sure.
and the religion that he put there. So
Sure.
this would be the mother religion of the post-Diluvian epoch, and the same
Okay.
religion that was before the flood that crossed, that
Okay.
we would call through polytheist or secular understanding as Zoroastrianism, whether or not it's the Avestan Persian version of the Achaemenid kings in Zoroastrianism, or it's the Sanskrit version in the Indus Valley, um, or just the more Western Greek version, let's put it that way, of Zoroastrianism as it comes downstream, and understand that Mithra is a word in Sanskrit and in Proto-Indo-European and in Indo-Aryan for
Yeah.
these multiple different nuanced languages, which are the same language. They're almost the same. They just have a little bit different spellings of a lot of the words. That Mitra is an equivalent to Shiva, which becomes a kind of composite god created sometime after the flood.
Oh, you're
That
doing
seems,
Shiva of India. I was thinking
yes,
of Oath or Shiva,
yeah.
a week.
So
So okay, all
yes.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so Mitra would be that equivalent god that's a destroyer god of fire that incarnates in the dragon Messiah that I will call Antichrist in the end time.
Interesting.
Yeah,
So
same mythos,
are you
and
going
is also,
CERN
I mean,
a little? Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
yeah,
CERN. Weave some CERN in there too, because they
yeah.
they have their Shiva there too.
They do, and I'll do the weave, like the Trump weave. We'll weave it in.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Weave it in. Yeah.
and so Mitra and Mithraism is the religion of Rome that's most popular amongst the army and one of the more popular religions of Rome,
Okay.
and is
Okay.
the religion that's merged into Constantine's Roman Catholicism of about 300 AD, shortly thereafter. So you
Okay.
get like, December 25 is the birth date of Mitra. You get the black gowns of the fathers. The priests were called fathers. You get all of the sort of imagery as he's trying to create this state-sponsored religion. So what's interesting about CERN,
Yep.
Mitra, Shiva,
Yep.
and Azazel, and Abaddon, Apollyon,
Oh, there
as
you
we
go.
get
I
when
knew
we
you were
are to
going to go there.
Revelation 9.
Okay.
Yep,
Yep. Yep.
is that the secret societies venerated it, and the Gnostic religion within the secret societies, and in particular in the time of the Templars, and
Yep.
still even to this day, they worshiped a head or a god that they called Baphomet.
Okay.
That means in Proto-Indo-European, Bapho and Metra is Father Mitra.
Wow.
So, and Azazel is depicted as a goat god. Used to be some other watcher, likely Seraphim. And he's the one who provides all the knowledge and is why he's venerated in the knowledge religion of polytheism and Gnosticism. And so he's the one who taught the arts of war and the technology of war that would have went with it before the flood that we're just catching up to this day. So bear with me as I knit this together now.
Knit it together. You're doing great.
Yeah. So we have Shiva,
Sure.
which is venerated by the scientists and organization of CERN, which we're told is a European acronym of a research organization. I won't go through the minutiae of the word
You don't need to.
CERN,
Yeah.
but that is just a disguise.
Hmm.
So when we look at Mitra being the god who is coming in the end time, Azazel is the chief of the watchers who taught all the knowledge,
Okay.
who's is the and leader according to the book of Enoch of the one that went of him and those watchers that went to the pit prison that's going to be released in the end time. You now have a connection to Azazel and Abaddon and Apollyon as the destroyer of the antediluvian world, taught all the arts of war. Well, Shiva and Mitra are these war gods who destroy the earth by fire and then recreate going forward, and incarnate into individuals. So Mitra, well, Shiva is said to have incarnated like a dozen times into individuals, just as
Okay.
Vishnu did even more. Just as Satan would have incarnated into Judas to have him go through with the betrayal of Jesus to give him that
Sure.
additional power.
Yeah.
And so there might be a relationship between Azazel with that incarnation into Lord Maitreya, which is a
You
transliteration of
studied Freya.
Mitra.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't know that you
Yeah,
spent any time with that. Okay,
yeah,
because that was
because
such a cream
yeah,
years ago, and then he died, and I figured, well,
yeah,
that's going to go away. No, it'll come back.
yeah. It's a title of the future Antichrist of polytheism. So
Sure.
if Azazel comes up out of the pit prison, is the same as Mitra, and is the same as Shiva, and incarnates. And this might be the god that Antichrist worships in secret because he worships a god of fortresses, Hebrew Ma'az, if I pronounced it
Well,
correctly, which
Uzim, yes. Yeah.
is and it goes back in its source words or derivative of, it's going to be going back to Azaz, and Ez
I
for
agree
goat.
with you. I agree with you. I see Ma Uzim, so
Yeah,
there's the strength in there, the Uz, the Azazel portion. And I mentioned that to a very brilliant Jewish friend that knows Hebrew inside and out.
yeah,
And he said, no, it doesn't work. But you know what? It does.
it
It's
does.
in there. Yeah.
It's in there. So there's a connection there. And Azazel is the scapegoat
Oh,
on
yeah.
the second goat on the Day of Atonement. That's not properly, in my opinion, accounted for. Like, what is this sacrifice for? Because there's already the first goat to sacrifice the sins of Israel. So why a second goat? Likely the sins before the flood. Now, where this all comes together now
Yeah.
is that in the language of the giants, of
Okay.
Zoroastrianism
Sure.
that we
Yeah.
talked about earlier,
Yep.
there is a word that's spelled CERN, and it's pronounced, and it
I
also
didn't know
be
that.
pronounced as it's transliterated as K. So
Okay.
it can be pronounced and transliterated as CERN or Kern, just as you get the Hebrew
Okay.
word Karen,
Sure.
which is, with a Q as we get it transliterated, which would be likely coming from the word horn.
Okay.
And you have
Aaron.
Ashtaroth Karnaim in
Yep.
Genesis 14, which is Ashtaroth, the two-horned one of Ashtaroth. That's the city
Okay.
there, right?
Okay. Yep.
Karnaim in the plural, two horns.
Yep.
Um, and so you have this Hebrew, this Indo-European, Indo-Aryan Sanskrit word CERN, which means no, I'm confusing Mitran, but this word
That's
means
fine.
two-horned god,
Sure. That
a,
works for
go-
me.
a goat god.
Works for me. Yeah.
And now in the Etruscan, the
Yep.
Proto-Latin pantheon, you actually have a goat god named CERN, which would be the same word that's transliterated over into the Druidic pantheon of Cernunnos. Again, goat god, nature god, and would be akin to the pan god and all the other different goat god names that comes down through Greek mythology and history.
Yep.
So they seem
Okay.
to be the same group of angels that are degraded and particularly connected to Azazel, who all of these horned gods, including Odin in the Norse pantheon,
Sure.
have this position of power, but aren't necessarily the chief god. So Pan is very, very important in the Greek
Oh, yeah.
pantheon, but
Oh, yeah.
Zeus is the offspring god that's the chief after the flood versus Kronos before the flood. So
Right.
it's kind of oddly out of place, but hugely important, and we're not told why.
It's intriguing when CERN did their big celebration, their decadent celebration. They had Pan everywhere,
Yeah,
and they were celebrating him. So I'm reading from Leviticus 16 real quick.
yep,
Hashem spoke to Moses after the death of Aaron's two sons, and when they approached before Hashem and they died, and Hashem said to Moses, "Speak to Aaron, your brother. He shall not come at all times into the sanctuary within the curtain." So basically, we've got the start of the Yom Kippur celebration. Not
yeah,
celebration, it's a fast. But, in the end, it's going to be a celebration
yep.
when we finally learn the meaning of all of these things. Anyway,
Well,
um,
I think all of the feasts are prophetic, and they were given
yeah,
to Israel
yeah.
as a macro timetable to benchmark certain events.
Well, some make sense easily now. We look
Yep.
at Yeshua and we say, okay, Passover, he died on Passover.
Yes.
We look
Yeah.
at unleavened bread. Oh, he was sinless, and a
Yep.
week of that sounds great.
Yep.
Okay, first fruits. It sounds like he resurrected on first fruits, and
Yes.
that is the first fruits of our resurrection in
Yes.
in the end of days.
Yes.
But then, but
So on and so forth. Exactly
yeah,
my point.
but we
Yes.
don't exactly know. Well, I think we know about Shavuot coming up in a few weeks here,
Yep.
counting the weeks for that. We kind of understand, the Torah was given, and then also the Holy Spirit was given.
Yep.
But
Yes.
in terms of the fall festivals, we don't know. But it is, and the he goat designated by lot for Azazel shall be stood alive before Hashem to provide atonement through it, and sent Azazel to the wilderness. The rabbis state that he was killed, thrown off a cliff. I
Yeah.
don't know, but he
Yep.
doesn't come back.
Yep.
And when he doesn't come back, the red string, the red thread, whatever it
Yep.
happens to be, turns white, and everybody's
Yep.
excited. We were forgiven, and there
Yep.
wasn't anything to do that day other than pray and hope that the string turns white. You know, so,
Yep.
and it did up until the time of Yeshua, and then after he died and resurrected,
Yep.
it didn't turn white after that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the bottom line is you're tying Azazel in, and people,
Yes.
that's Revelation, or that's Revelation. That's Leviticus 16. We can
Yeah.
say that name. I don't like to see the other demonic names from Enoch.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
but they are present in the book,
Yes.
and they match up. I mean,
Yep.
obviously, we can cite Michael and
Yep. And
Gabriel
Gabriel.
and
Yep.
other. Yeah. Okay. So
And in the Apocrypha, you could yeah,
yeah,
also add Uriel and
sure.
Raphael, as I recall. So
Raphael's a good one.
yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a safe one too. But some of the other names, I mean, obviously there's some demonism tied in with these names and evil and
Yeah.
things like that. So yeah, but Azazel, everything is ascribed to Azazel. And for the people, just so they can see Yom Kippur real quick, you've got the bull in the middle for the high priest. You've
Yep.
got one goat to the right hand side, one goat to the left hand side. The goat on the right is turned out to Azazel, or actually, it's probably the left hand side turned out to Azazel. Either way, when you see the crosses and Yeshua in the middle, he's the bull. And then one thief turns towards him, one thief turns away from him. It's These festivals talk to each other.
Yes, they do. They
Yeah.
certainly do. And
Now,
it's an absolute crime. They're not taught in the Christian churches, and we don't recognize those feasts in somehow,
are
some way.
do you celebrate or at least study the feast to help you
Yes.
to
Yeah.
learn about
Yeah.
for your information for your book
Yeah.
research?
I
We
mean,
call it.
I like to do the Sabbath on Saturday.
Oh, you
I
do?
yeah, I don't tend to go from, you know, dusk to dusk, but Saturday,
Okay,
at least
wonderful.
part of it is, yeah, and I do like, to make sure I mark Passover.
Oh
And the
yeah,
other ones I try and sort of think about and work in, but I haven't
right.
sort of made that full. And I know there's no obligation that I have to, but I feel from what I believe I should be, and I'm not going full Torah. I'm not, because
Right.
I'm not Israelite in any way that I'm aware of. But I think all the disciples, they were of Judah, and they also continued after starting the church. They celebrated the seven feasts,
They did, yeah. You
and
realize I'm a messianic pastor, and so in fact, we had our fellowship going for a number of years, and then we
yeah,
canceled it because of COVID, and now we're starting back up again as of a
yeah,
few weeks ago. So I mean, I like that, but I don't push it on other people because
yeah,
not everybody wants to keep Sabbath or understands why, or but if you
yeah.
want to know the end times, I think you need to know the all eight of them, including
You do.
Sabbath as the
Yes.
festivals. Yeah.
Yes,
So,
absolutely. And I work more of it into things I talk about, whether it's on social media or on shows. But I have another book that'll come down the road where I have to, not, I don't have to, but it, it will require, otherwise it would like leave a hole, that I put that prophetic side to the feasts in place as we look at this narrative that I'm going to be doing, because I'm going to be starting with the building of the Holy Covenant and the
okay,
curses and the blessings of the covenant.
sure.
And I'm going to be talking about second Exodus and how that works in parallel
Ooh,
with end time Christian prophecy.
do you know Dina Dye at all?
No,
She's
I do
been
not.
working on that lately. Okay, so
Yep.
she's a Messianic Jew like I am,
Yep.
and so she and she's more Jewish than I am. But anyway, the point is, she's been looking at the repeating patterns that occur,
Yeah.
based off the first Exodus, and then other situations like that, and then moving towards the ultimate second Exodus, which should be
Yeah.
greater than the first.
Oh, it'll be so great, according to the book of Isaiah, that nobody will talk about the first Exodus
Right.
again.
Yeah,
So
that's huge. And
that's,
that's in our
yeah,
lifetimes. And
it
I
is.
truly believe that we're going to be witnesses. We're supposed to be, credible witnesses, ones that could be hauled into court and
Yeah.
state clearly that Yeshua is, our Mashiach.
Right.
And so it's not just gloom and doom. There's
Yeah.
a lot of wonderful things that could occur
Yeah.
as we move through the end times.
Yeah.
And part of it
Yeah.
is just witnessing.
Yep. I
Thoughts?
think it might be the book of Jeremiah, not Isaiah, that tells us that we, but I think
It's
there's
in
one in
Isaiah
Isaiah
2.
that, yeah,
Isaiah 11 does
yeah.
list it out very well.
Yeah, I was going to say, I
Jeremiah
think it
23.
might be 11, but for sure, a couple of times
11.
in Jeremiah. Yeah.
Yeah, there are some
Yep.
aspects in 19 also with the five
Yep.
cities that
Yep.
speak the language of Canaan that seem to match up with that second
Yeah.
Exodus.
Well, and just think about an Exodus that comes from the four corners of the earth in the
Yeah.
time of Antichrist, in direct opposition. And the book of Micah calls Jesus the breaker.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And this happens. He breaks
Peretz.
the
Yes.
lost tribes and leads the visible ones of Judah from around the world together to be brought together at time of the resurrection in Ezekiel 37. And of course, it's the second Exodus passage as you move on into the teens. So yeah, and he's going, and Micah calls him a breaker, breaking them out of the prisons, and they're going to walk through water and fire.
Oh, yeah. This is going to be amazing, people.
Yeah.
You're going to be thrilled that you're part of the end times. I mean, yeah, it's going to be scary at times, but really, and we'll get to the fallen angel issues in a
Yep.
couple of minutes here. We're
Yep.
not quite ready to go with that because, Gary, I did not know that you had this background. I know about Genesis 6 and things
Yeah.
like that, but I didn't know that you also had a strong Jewish background in terms of understanding certain Jewish phrases and isms, so to speak.
Yeah, I thought there was a point in time where I thought I had to go beyond the English translation.
Yeah.
And I needed to understand better from the Hebrew and what was going on in the Old Testament, because most Christians, as I did when I first went through and read the Bible, I barely got to the New Testament, and I
Yeah.
didn't know everything was important in the Old Testament. I was just
Right.
bored to death, right? And going, oh,
Right. Yeah.
all of this information, what does it mean? And so I decided I needed to know more about that, because obviously things that are talked about in the New Testament are extensions out of what the Old Testament talked about. And
Right.
you can't really define the New Testament without using the Old Testament. Otherwise, you get into polytheism, and it's more of an interpretive approach.
Right.
So go back to the beginning where the answers are. And that's why I wanted to learn more. But then, you start to look at it and say, geez, you got all of these different Hebrew words and they have multiple meanings, some of them nuanced, some of them directly opposite. But you start to learn a pattern, not only in terms of what translators do, right or wrong,
Yep.
but what the original writers were trying to do with words with consistency, that you could start to better select the passages. Because even in those translations, even though you could pick a meaning that might fit your preconceived conclusion or your biases, you
Yep.
can't create any other conflicts by doing that. And so it has to be perfectly consistent all the way through to understand what that word means. So yeah, it took a fairly deep dive, and I'm
Yep.
not fluent in Hebrew, and I would not try and
Yeah, you're close
overstate, but
enough.
I I just want to have an understanding of how the Old Testament works,
Sure.
because you just can't leave it alone. And the problem with so much prophetic side of Christianity is they completely ignore Old Testament prophecy unless they're going to cherry pick something for their biased preconceived
Yeah,
conclusion.
they'll do Isaiah 17:1, Damascus, it's all Damascus, but you're
Yeah,
cherry
yeah,
picking, guys. Come on. And that's
yeah.
not the next sign that's going to occur.
Yeah, so do it right. Do it, and that's why I thought, I don't want to be blindsided. If I'm going to get out there and write books, or if I'm going to be doing public discussions, I better have a good understanding of both the Greek and the Hebrew,
Mm.
and understand why different translators did different things with words. But what I found very upsetting
Yeah.
with the King James translators is they didn't apologize for at all in any
Mm-mm.
way for
Mm.
their inconsistent translation. And
Yep.
they knew they did that, but I think they were trying to do that. So, well, we're going to be criticized anyway. So we'll just let the people sort out which one they want for
I
translation.
memorized scripture. I'm a Methodist minister's kid, and my father was brilliant. He was a math physics major, and was going to build bridges. Anyway, the point is, I know my King James best of all,
Yep.
and there are some errors there, but also
Yep.
when you were citing, well, we were discussing it. We haven't discussed it on the show yet, but basically the seed mingling together from
Yeah.
Daniel 2:43
Yeah.
and 44.
Yeah.
In that case, they actually nailed it well because it's the zarah, it's the seed
Yep.
that won't mingle properly between the
Yep.
two. And so, if we have a situation coming up where the aliens or the EDs, I call them extra dimensionals, try to mate with humans, then
Yep.
it's a seed mixture issue. And they
Yeah.
always, every UFO story is, well, they wanted to inspect me and plant seed within me, and what's up
Yeah.
with that? So, Gary, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I love that Daniel 2:43 passage that you're quoting. And
Sure.
yeah, it says they shall mingle themselves with the
Hmm.
seed of men.
Yep.
And if that doesn't freak you out when
Especially
you
with
read
the
it,
AI angle right now,
yeah,
they're trying to add consciousness in. They're trying to change the seed, modify, we'll call it GMO on humankind.
yeah,
And so all of these things seem to apply with what you're writing in your
yeah.
book.
Yeah, well, and AI is going to have a significant piece in the extension of what that I think that means. But the they there are the 10 kings.
Okay.
This is I mean, there's something else that's going on here. And again, you can take it back into the Hebrew and you can look at it mean as actual seed for a physical thing, or it could be spiritual and some sort of possession that might be going on there. But AI is going to be bringing us a technology that was in place before the flood that we're just catching up to, which is interdimensional
Yep.
and can change DNA at the quantum level by
Right.
whatever it's doing that's going to come downstream from that. So it's going to be important, but we also have to look at other passages that says we need to look at this in not just one sort of aspect, because I think it's going to have multiple applications. But Psalms 21, 8 through 10 is just a super parallel passage for that. And it's talking about the time of God's anger and when he's going to swallow them up in wrath. And we find out
Okay.
who them are in verse 10. And it says,
Okay.
their fruit thou shalt destroy from the earth, and their seed from among the children of men. So now
Okay.
we have two sort of out of place passages if you're not sort of understanding that there's a seed war going on here of some
Sure.
sort, right? And they tend to be sort of reflective of the branch of the terrible ones that are destroyed on a mountain at Armageddon, as I would infer that that mountain is. I won't go through the minutia, but just my research would point
Well,
that
we'll
that's going
go
to be
through it,
Armageddon. Is
Gary.
that?
You're
Yeah.
not getting away that easily.
Okay. But that's the branch of the terrible ones, which are the same terrible ones that are talked about in Ezekiel 32 that
Okay.
are in the sides of the pit prison talking to Pharaoh, another terrible one who is about to be attacked by the terrible of nations, Nebuchadnezzar. And then you have the strong ones there in Ezekiel 32, which is Hebrew El. So it's probably referring to the fallen angels in that pit prison as well. So these terrible ones are the ones who did terrible things to humans and other things while they are on earth. And because they're the worst ones, they seem to have gone to the pit prison, who are also coming out at the opening of the pit prison, which now says we're going to have the worst of the demon spirits amongst us, as well with the worst of the fallen angels.
Will the demon spirits be able to merge somehow with AI?
Yes, they will. And it's kind of a bit of a roundabout way to get there. But if you look at um, a passage we get in the New Testament in Jude 1:6, where it has this passage where the angels who left their habitation
Right.
in heaven,
Yep.
that's the Greek word oiketerion, meaning a dwelling place for a spirit.
Yeah. Sure.
And so to take a physical body, they have to create their own bodies because they're spirit beings. So they need an oiketerion, a dwelling place for the spirit, which is the soul, and the
Yep.
body, which is of the physical world. And in the New Testament, we're told there's a spirit, there's a soul, and there's a body. Human
Okay.
spirits go back to heaven in a sleep-like state, not soul sleep. Spirits go back to heaven, according to Ecclesiastics, when we
Sure.
die.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so spirits created through fallen angels who created the giants, their spirits aren't permitted to go to heaven and they're not going to sleep. So these become the ghosts, like Rapha,
Sure.
7497
Sure.
in the concordance. And it means a ghost, a dead person, a spirit, an evil spirit. Of the giants, 7497, both deriving from 7495, meaning to heal, right? So as we talked about Raphael, for the audience, if they're not aware
Rafa.
of it, means Raphael means healer of God or God heals, depending on how
Yep.
you want to
Yep. Rafa.
translate that. So if we understand that a spirit needs an oiketerion of some sort, is there
Yep.
such a thing as a technological oiketerion?
Kind of. Yeah.
And I think there is. And I think we get there biblically through teraphim or teraphim.
Oh,
That
you're
too.
going with what's the name of the book? Jasher, where we've got the weird
No,
situation of teraphim.
teraphim shows up translated
Well,
in English in the KJV several
oh
times.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Not
It's there
all.
in
Yeah.
Rachel is sitting on a teraphim as they're
Yeah.
leaving Lavan. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's translated as idol there instead of teraphim, but
It's a
it's this
teraphim.
family idol, right?
So
And
you literally believe that they would take a piece of gold, wrap it around the tongue, basically, of some kind of a little creature that was maybe like 2.5, 3 feet tall,
yeah,
and it would speak to them.
well, there was some sort of talking idol of
Yeah.
some form,
Oh
however
yeah.
it is, and it could be a technology that comes down from Babel that would be antediluvian angelic technology. So here's the
Okay.
connection, though.
Yeah.
Teraphim is a derivative of the word Rapha, 7495.
Yep. Yep.
And so all of a sudden you have people worshiping demons through this idol that can talk. And we're told biblically idols don't talk except for this kind of idol, which is unique.
Okay.
So roll that forward now to the end times with AI and the image of the beast. One would expect that this image that can cause and do anything will be speaking. I think it's going to be a modern teraphim. But I think we're also going to see other technological oiketerions created for these demonic spirits so they can interact physically in the body again. And it could be a combination of chimera technology, cloning, and transhumanism. So when you see these creatures described in Revelation 9 and Joel 1 and 2, riding
Okay.
these
Revelation
horses,
9. Which part of 9? The fifth trumpet or the sixth trumpet?
still in the fifth trumpet. It's the
Okay.
200
Okay.
million man
Okay.
war. So it's not the second woe, or I mean the first woe, but it's an
It's the first.
extension out of that, right?
Okay. Okay.
And
Interesting.
this is the same war as Joel 1 and 2 versus Joel 3, which is the Armageddon war, because it's still to come. And
Oh,
these
it's still.
descriptions,
Thank you. Thank you. It's still to come. Yeah.
yes. And so the description of these riders and horses are identical in Revelation 9 and Joel 1 and 2. In book 2, I actually put those
They are.
descriptions side
They
by
are.
side,
Yeah. They are.
and it's astounding. So I connect
Yeah.
that as likely the Gog war, because Gog doesn't show up in the Table of Nations anywhere. Magog does, but Gog does not.
Yeah, Magog does, but not Gog. So,
Yeah, so
um,
Gog of Magog, chief prince of Meshech.
and
And
as we're
Gog,
digging through now, I look at the first half of Revelation 9 as the fifth trumpet, and you've got the
yes,
Apollyon,
yep,
Abaddon coming
yep,
up with, I believe, 200 other creatures with him. I
yeah,
call
at least,
at least 200. Okay,
yeah,
okay. And then the second half is 200 million. But I don't think
yes,
they do the killing right then. I think it's a time slated for later on when they will come up out of Babylon and start murdering and come in from the east.
Well,
Would
we
you
have this,
agree?
yeah, but we have this war we have to deal with in Ezekiel 38 and 39.
Right,
And it takes 6 months to bury that army. And
right.
God fights for Israel, who were living in rich
Yeah,
in safety. So after
yeah,
Daniel 9:27, but as
yeah.
you move into the burial in Ezekiel 39, after that is second Exodus. So it happens before second Exodus.
You think the war occurs before the second Exodus?
Yes, I don't think that's
Oh,
Armageddon. I think that's the same war, Joel 1 and 2, Ezekiel 38 and 39, and Revelation 9. And as the counterfeit Armageddon, Antichrist will say he won. And then he goes in immediately after that to set up the abomination because he needs a counterfeit Armageddon.
okay, interesting. All right. Wow, I need to look at your timeline. And everybody loves their timelines. And
Yes.
also our timelines are constantly moving because so much happens now in
Yeah.
the world today. So wow, okay.
Yeah.
So
And,
you've
and,
got
and Joel 1 and 2 says this is the largest army ever created or
yeah,
ever will be.
oh yeah.
So people will say, well, that has to be Armageddon.
I
So if you want to deceive even the elect, he needs a counterfeit Armageddon.
I
And Gog
tend to
would be a perfect Antichrist figure for him.
we'll see if we agree. If we disagree, I don't care.
Yep.
But
Doesn't
I
matter.
tend to
It's an end
feel
time
that
war anyways,
you're
but
right.
that's
I
where I place
tend
it.
to feel that the two witnesses arrive right away, and
Yep.
they bring about this peace. In part because they'll call down fire from heaven and be able to cease whatever was
Yes.
going on in the temple area that isn't holy, and
Yep.
then we'll need we will see holiness in our lifetimes on the Temple Mount. We'll have the red heifer offered, the proper
Yep.
red heifer at the
Yeah.
proper location, and then they'll we on my show a couple of weeks ago we were discussing the exact location of the altar, and that
Wow.
particular person, Rico Cordes, said that seems to be the Dome of the Chains, which is
Yeah.
directly in front of
Yep.
the dome, not the Dome of the Spirits, but not the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Oh, help me!
Yep.
The Dome of the Rock, the Dome of the
Yep.
Rock, right in
Yep.
front of it, and then the Dome of the Spirits probably is the location of the Holy of Holies. And so, but he also explained that you need to go down about 6 meters to get to the right altar location because, according to Torah, it has to be on the foundation stones
Yeah.
of the Temple Mount.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway,
Good.
as you were saying, yeah,
Yeah. No, go ahead. So what I do like though is that it forces us to look at things sort of in context of the events
mm-hmm,
and sort of sort them out. And that
yep,
Gog war makes sense if there's terrible ones that are
yeah,
coming out of the pit prison. So who's Gog? He is in Greek mythology before the flood, a
yeah,
giant created by Iapetus. And Iapetus also produced a giant named Magog before the flood, and
okay,
also Albion. Now, after the flood, and it's not uncommon to have giants named after the flood, after giants before the flood,
oh sure,
aka
absolutely,
Gilgamesh. We see sixth generation or so after the flood, and there's a Gilgamesh in the Enoch Book of Giants that's recorded.
sure,
So sounds reasonable that they would be named after each other. And that's a tradition of the giants. They name and have these
sure,
titles of names
oh
that
yeah,
go down through repeating through history. Um, so the Gai's kings, tyrants, the
yep,
tyrannos,
mm-hmm,
these were Assyrian, Anatolian, island of Crete, southern Greece kings.
okay,
And they're part of the Herculides bloodline of kings.
okay,
So Hercules is the son of Alcmene, the female, and Zeus, the god, who started a bloodline of giants. And
okay,
many of these kings were named Gog and Magog and other giants as part of those titles or king names that they provided to the tyrants. So so you could even look at it from that perspective that it might be a terrible one that's post-Diluvian, or maybe it's both. But you have this Gog that goes back to polytheism and their creation of the giants that's in the Bible that we don't have other scripture to say what's the reference for that. And so I think it's just that sort of reference that this is part of the terrible ones. And you get a whole list of them in Ezekiel 32 that are talked about, some slain, some not, but they're going to be part of the end time.
Interesting. Okay, so you're saying Gog can't be a human being; it has to be one of the terrible ones.
I think so, yes.
Interesting. Okay, and he'll be a giant also.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, interesting.
Well, at least I mean, if was a disembodied giant, he's going to need an Oikotarian, or he's going to
Why?
have to or he's going to have to possess one of those 10 kings.
Okay, why couldn't he? Yeah, be the giant, so to speak, but be able to possess then, demonically possess, kind of like Judas. I mean, Judas was
Yeah.
part of the 12, and then
Yep.
suddenly Satan just possesses him.
Yep.
So could Gog be a human being that is possessed at some point in time?
Yes, he could very well be, and I think that's likely how you work in some of these odd sort of passages that we were talking about, particularly Daniel 2:43, because it's talking about they.
Yeah,
So
they.
if you look at Meshach, the that's the etymological root for the city of Moscow. So speculation suggests that as we look at if we're in the fig tree generation and we're moving through the sorrows towards the last 7 years, that Russia is going to have a bloodline king of some sort. And Putin takes, and whether it's true or not, he set his own mythos down when he was coming to power in the early 2000s, taking his bloodline back to the Puchanin dynasty of Kiev, the original czars. And
Oh,
that the Romanov is a junior offshoot of the Puchanin bloodline established in 1000 AD or so by Vladimir the Great, whom Putin also recognizes. And so he was a illegitimate, his grandfather was an illegitimate son. So
okay.
outside the standard marriage, where you keep part of the name, you're part of the aristocracy, but you're not part of the royal family. And his father moved to St. Petersburg just before World War I, which is how he ends up in Russia. So, but it does start to make sense whether it's actually true or just is he believes it is true, or he's just using it for his mythos to justify taking Kiev back and reestablishing the
Yeah.
Romanov Puchanin dynasty.
Well, and it's part also of the bear waking up in Daniel 2 and goring much flesh. And he seems to have three ribs in his mouth. And Putin seems to be goring three regions, at least, if not more, at some point in time here. So, and
Yeah,
whether I don't know if you agree with the Daniel 2, or is that
Daniel 7.
7?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily. One thing I've learned over time is there are many layers to the allegories and prophecies that can blend into more than one area and still be true.
Sure.
So I'm not against using the allegory of the beast empires for specific kings,
Sure.
although we don't get 10 empires, but you could certainly use bear as an allegory, eagle as an allegory, lion as an allegory,
Lion
right?
sounds like UK, and
Yeah.
the eagle is pulled off the
Yep.
UK and forms America, and we
Yep.
are the most powerful
Yep.
nation in the world today, so
Yep.
we kind of match.
Yep. So I'm open to that. I just don't
Okay,
have enough to say I think that that's the case. But the imagery is part of the 10 kings, right? As a whole.
okay, okay,
So individuals certainly might hold part of that.
okay. So we'll disagree on this one. You're going
Yep.
with 10 kings. When I read the Greek for that Revelation
Yep.
17, I'm not
Yep.
citing the Old Testament here. I'm seeing the word hosts before the basileia, which would be as kings. They're
Yep.
not actually kings. And so I've been arguing that the 10 that are as kings in Revelation 17 are big tech, and that they're
Well,
going to
there
divide up the world.
that's certainly how some will interpret that. I know how they get there.
Right,
And so again, that's why I try not to be too dogmatic.
right,
And but no matter what, high tech's going to be part of the 10 king empire in Babylon and the antichrist system. So no
right.
matter what, it's going to be there. Um, but the 10 kings, they don't have to be all of royal bloodlines. There could be like you have with the 5 toes on each feet, and you have iron mixed with clay.
Okay.
And so you may have some that are of royal bloodlines and ones that would be just like a, a strong man, so to speak, right?
Okay.
That's leading. I mean, you could have that as a possibility as well. So, but there is this connection to that ancient technology, to how those ancient kings and leaders used that technology.
It is intriguing that most of the big tech guys are from America right now. And
Yeah,
so many people have argued for years that Europe is the place of the 10 kings and the 10
yeah,
kingdoms. And I'm just not sensing that. Although I've changed on one area. When you look at banking, I think at some point in time, many nations east of Jerusalem are going to distrust American bankers and banking, and
yes.
they'll want to go with European banking. So you could have 10 bankers be a part of
Well,
that
you
too.
also already have a banking system that's in the East right now. You have their own credit cards. They're establishing their own money. You could have
Yeah. Yeah.
5,
Oh yeah.
a split of 2 systems that are
You could.
coming about in the end time as well. And the other thing about AI is that's going to run the militaries.
Oh
You're
yeah,
going
absolutely.
so you're going to have AI as your super weapon, and so will everybody else, because it runs all the weaponry and
Right.
creates the weaponry, and they're going to be warring with each other, some but through the kings, right? And it's
Right.
so there's a symbiotic relationship there.
Interesting. So, okay, so I'll throw one more weird thing by you from Revelation 17. I'm drawing through that the seven kings, and then the eighth seems to be the Antichrist, that the
Yep.
seven kings remind me of the United States again, as Mystery Babylon, so to speak. And
Well,
I'm basing, yeah, okay, as you were
well,
saying.
Well, Babylon, though, you have to remember is there's 4 components to it.
Right.
So it's a city, because it's said to
Yep.
be a city 9 times in Revelation.
Oh yeah.
It, she sits on many waters, and the allegory of it is a idolatrous religion
Sure.
and a universal religion. It's also riding the beast of empires
Right.
with reins that you would ride with to control. And
Sure.
just as the daughters of Babylon controlled all of the ancient religions and all of the beast empires, and that it's a geopolitical organization, that the 10 kings are somehow subservient because they grow jealous in Revelation 17 and hand their power over to Antichrist, who is going to kill Babylon or destroy Babylon, or the 10 kings and Antichrist will destroy Babylon as one of his first things that he does in the last 3.5 years, right after the abomination. So you've got that geopolitical organization, and it's also an economic system that will grow rich. And so will all the merchants and the great men of the world grow rich in the first 3.5 years. So it's those 4 components that we also have to factor in.
Okay. And I'm citing, unfortunately, and you may not know these men, but David Wilkerson said America is Mystery Babylon, and
Yeah.
Dimitri Duduman said that America was Mystery Babylon.
Well, you'd be better off saying it's New York City
That's where I'm
than
going. Yeah,
all of the
that's
country,
where the
right?
United Nations is. That makes it
Yeah.
evil.
The
And
problem
that,
with the
yeah,
problem with New York, though, is the 7 hills that Babylon
I
sits on,
know, I know, yeah.
and it's not an ancient city.
No. Well, if you're a Native American, you could be ancient in New
Yeah,
York.
if you say it was built on ancient ruins, but then go into prehistory and provide something that would be recognized as an ancient city from the First Nations history that would be known
I
elsewhere.
know you're winning the argument, but it is a mystery still. So
It is. But that's why we want to talk through all of these things, so that we're asking the right questions when we're trying to fit things together. And ultimately, people have to make their own decisions on what they believe or how they
right,
think they might come together. But by going through the process, you test things and you ask things. But
right.
at some point in time, you have to say, "This is what I think."
Right, right. And so I'm still working on mine. My
Yeah,
timeline is morphing always because there's so much happening in the world right now, Gary. I mean, it's just
yeah.
shocking how quickly, like the Iran war, I thought it was over as of April 15th, and it's still in limbo. Iran is defeated, but I I I hope that what will occur is that Iran will finally concede and then come in under Turkey. And so
Yeah.
you're citing Russia. I'm citing Turkey as Magog and Meshech and Tuval. And maybe there's some stands involved too. And so I tend to think that Gog would lead Turkey plus Iran plus Paris,
Yeah.
it should be, uh, against Israel and the end times because they hate Israel.
Yeah.
Thoughts
Yeah.
about that?
So, but you could also say, Turkey, and I agree they have a large role to play, and
Yeah, oh
probably
yeah,
will go more with the Eastern Alliance.
right.
But you could also look at them as Tagarma too,
Oh yeah,
and still be part of
absolutely.
that, alliance in
Hmm.
Ezekiel 38 and 39.
So, and you would say once again that that alliance starts the war late in the process.
At least 6 months before the abomination, up to a year and a
Really,
half.
you're
Yeah.
the first guy that I've ever heard say that. That's
Well,
very
just
interesting.
and I arrived there just by going, the details aren't quite fitting. So how does that work? I have 6 months where the army's going to be buried. How does that fit if it's in at Armageddon? I don't get something that matches up after that battle for that 6 months. And then I
Okay,
have the second Exodus and the year acceptable to the Lord to deal with, as well as
right.
the year of the Lord's wrath, as the Old Testament tells us about. So I'm struggling. How did that
I
doesn't make
know
a whole
that's a
lot of
tough one
sense.
to fit in. So I'm
Yeah.
going second Exodus after the abomination of desolation
Yes.
that the Jews run out. And basically, they're just doing the same thing that Moses did with the people 42 encampments and running around for 3.5 years, basically getting back in touch with who God the Father is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they relate well to him. They don't understand Yeshua.
It's likely to be multiple locations, as you're saying, because this is second Exodus, so
Right.
it's going to have things like it. And
Yep.
Revelation 12
Yep.
has them taking on wings of eagle, right? Just as that reference is used in the book of Exodus for
It's there. It's
it's
there.
there.
Yes.
So there's a relationship there, and they're moving around, and eventually, and we're told by the descriptions that it's in the desert, it's in the wilderness, it's in the mountains. So you first read, you're thinking, well, okay, maybe it's all one place. It's just different descriptions. But then when you think about it, it's like, no, they're
They're
probably
moving.
moving
They're
around.
moving. They're moving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're going to go back to the tabernacles, right?
Well, and also you cited Daniel 11, and it looks like we'll both agree on this. It's
Yeah.
the Antichrist running around chasing them. I mean, you can
Yes.
see he's working around, kind of chasing them around. He can't catch up with them because they're being protected kind of by a cloud
Yeah.
by day and fire by night. And
Yep.
so he can't touch them, but he scares them.
Yep. Well, here's some things to look at. In Revelation 12, the dragon spews this river, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we get that in the Old Testament, which I think you're probably aware of. But for people that aren't, I mean, you've got passages that are talking about in Isaiah 27, 28, and Isaiah
Okay.
45 of
Okay.
this river that is going to overwhelm in the second Exodus. And even though we also know that they're going to be protected walking through water and
Sure.
fire,
Yep.
um, but it's going to be there attacking them all of the time when the covenant is annulled. Right?
Okay.
It's all
Okay.
related and stitched there together as you get into those different passages of
Which covenant is annulled? You just stated that and you piqued my
I think it's
curiosity.
Daniel 9:27.
Okay, that covenant is annulled. Okay,
Yes,
because
yes,
I
it's
was
the
looking
covenant
for
of
you.
death. Yeah,
Okay, okay. Well, I would say you're right that the covenant of death and the grave, so Hades and Mavet and Hades,
yep,
or whatever it is in the Hebrew, rather Greek, do same
yep,
difference. But the main thing is that is why Yeshua had to die the first time, and why
yep,
he's coming back the second time to kill off or destroy the grave and death. We can't have
yes.
death anymore,
Yes,
right?
and he has to fulfill the promises written into the covenant to
Okay.
reconcile the lost tribes and Judah, the southern kingdom, in the end time, right? He
You're
has to,
doing Ezekiel 36, 37,
yeah,
the new
and
covenant that way. Okay.
but even in Leviticus and Deuteronomy, in the writing of the Holy Covenant, you
Yep.
can follow the laws and have things fulfilled through the blessings of the covenant or the
Right.
curses of the covenant. And in
Okay.
the end time, because you're going to basically, and I'm just ad-libbing here, but because we're going to go through the curses, you're going to be dispersed around the world, and the northern kingdom gets lost, and then God's going to call them back by name
Okay.
in the end time. So that river that I'm talking about in Isaiah 28,
Oh,
you've
it's
got the
28.
covenant.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, you've got the covenant with death that's annulled when an
Yep.
overflowing scourge in verse 18
Okay.
overwhelms them.
Okay.
You also have in Isaiah uh, 43, you've got where they're going to pass through the waters that will overflow them, and they'll also pass through fire at that time. In Isaiah 27, and
Yep.
this is the time when the Leviathan obviously is killed in the end time.
Sure.
Um, in that day, a river, likely the Euphrates by the language there, as you take
It
that back
makes
to
sense with the
Hebrew. Yeah,
Euphrates. Yeah, it
yeah,
does. Yeah.
yeah. That Jehovah or Yahweh
Yep.
will beat off a channel or the river of the channel of the river from them, and Israel will be gathered up one by one. And that's in the days of the trumpet when that begins. So,
Interesting. Yeah, the trumpet is cited, the
yep,
great trumpet, in
yep,
28, Isaiah
yep,
28. So, yeah,
yep.
interesting.
Yeah, and
Okay,
the
you've
trumpet
done your homework.
and the trumpet is used for the sign and for the start of the Exodus as well. So it's part of the end of the trumpets. So and
Oh, that's a stretch. I
it
see where you're
is.
going.
Yep,
So, people, we have different trumpet calls.
yep,
Okay, in Judaism, Numbers 10, we have the oh goodness, Tekiah Gadol, Tekiah, which is a gathering. One trumpet, and you gather the leaders. Two trumpets, and you gather everybody. Then we have the Teruah, one trumpet again. It's for war with just the leaders meeting. Two trumpets, by the way, I'll just give you the calls
yep,
real quick. So,
yep,
a tequila is a long blast,
yep.
Teruah is a staccato, and then so basically he's citing the tequila, which is gathering, and if it's only one, then it's the leaders. The reason why I tend to support the Gadola part as the last trumpet is because then it would be so loud and overwhelming, kind of like Exodus 19, that would be the final gathering of everybody.
Yeah, I would sort of connect in some things, and you have the Feast of Trumpets.
Yep.
That's prophetic.
That's a
And
teruah. That's a war call. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you have a set of 7 trumpet blasts in the book of Revelation.
They're all
And it's
tequilas. They're
yep,
salpizo, but
yep,
it's
yeah,
the same difference. Yeah, it's
and
tequila.
it's a sequence of events, and the
There is no
rapture.
megalos at the end of
Yep,
the seventh one.
that's
There's
true.
Yeah.
But we do know that we get a last one with a rapture prophecy as the last trumpet. We don't have any
Okay.
other trumpets with a sequence that would include the last trumpet. So the only typology you would have prophetically in the New Testament would be that. And then
Yep.
when you start to look at events that have a trumpet that's blown in
Yeah.
significant events in the Old
Yep.
Testament, they seem to
Yep.
line up in the same general period of time.
Okay.
So I would all I'm saying is that how I would sort of string the trumpet allegory in there, if it's
Yep.
accurate,
Yep.
is that after rapture, at the
Yep.
last trumpet,
Yep.
and we're told it's the days of the trumpet, so it may be even a couple of years in that last.
It could be the day of
Yeah,
the
because
Lord, could be 7 years.
yeah,
It could be 3.5, whatever it happens to be. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I'm talking specifically of the trumpet, though.
Okay. Of the
In
trumpet. Sure.
Revelation, where it says the days of the seventh trumpet,
Sure.
so it's
Okay.
multiple days there. So it could be multiple years, as a day is a year, as in the 7 years of the last week. So same topology.
Okay.
Um, that this we don't have another trumpet list that happens prophetically, but because you have a timetable to work in here after the abomination, and that trumpets is also used in terms of the trumpet blast happening in Jesus's account when he gathers the elect. um, you have a scenario where you can start to look at bringing this together. And so if you have rapture that happens first at the sign, and the ensign or the standard or the banner. Was it neck or ness? I can't remember the pronunciation of the C off the top of my
Nace,
head.
nace,
Nace.
nace.
Yeah. You also have a trumpet aligned in passages at the time of that ensign and banner,
Okay.
which is at the timing of second Exodus as well. So if you have rapture, you have multiple, a year or two of the days, and
Yeah.
then the start of second Exodus, all of a sudden you got room for this to perhaps happen before the year of the Lord's wrath, as Isaiah 34:7 and Isaiah 63, 2-3 would talk about.
Okay, so I hope the people are overwhelmed. Let's answer a couple
Yeah.
of little questions here.
So it's
Um,
possible is all I'm saying.
this guy's a nice guy, and so Busky, UMC, so he's Marine, Semper Fi. Only thing I disagree with so far with Joel is Iran is defeated. He's not educated in arms. No biggie though. The reason why I'm stating that Iran is defeated is because ultimately Persia, Paras in Ezekiel 38 comes in underneath Gog Magog. So I
Yep.
believe that either they're defeated now or they will be based on prophecy. Thoughts,
Yeah,
Gary?
and there will be an Elam destruction specifically.
Are you going chapter 49 of, oh goodness, why am I blanking on Elam? Is that
Yeah.
Isaiah or Jeremiah? That's Jeremiah. Yeah.
Jeremiah, yeah, and you could link a couple other passages in there, but there's a destruction of Elam. Now, is that
Right.
separate from the Gog War? Is that separate from the Armageddon War? Because certainly Jesus Jehovah is going to uh, take care of a hit list as he's getting ready for
Oh yeah.
Armageddon,
Oh yeah.
right?
Oh yeah.
And then Antichrist is coming up the other side of the river, I think, and causing that destruction as well, according to Daniel 11. So there is a destruction of Elam, but is that in that last period just before the start of the Armageddon battle, or is that a different period? That's not always clear to me.
That's a tough one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are certain things that haven't occurred yet. You know, obviously, we mentioned Damascus is still
Yep.
there. I mean, you can
Still
still
there.
visit it. All right.
Yep.
Yeah. And so, Elam, and where is Elam, and which one is it? And I've heard the guys on the prophecy shows bring it up.
Hmm.
That's a tough one. I feel more comfortable with Jeremiah 50 and 51
Yep.
just because that seems to talk about Mystery Babylon,
Yes.
and things match exactly.
Yeah.
Elam
If
and
if
49 is a tough one.
Babylon
Yeah.
if Babylon is geographically located in Iraq
Yeah.
versus somewhere else, as we talked about earlier in a few locations, then you could look at Jeremiah 50 to 51 as inclusive of destroying Elam because it's basically in that general area, although maybe more specifically to the Uruk area than what Babylon might be a little bit geographically different, but certainly in that area. But typically, for a destruction, whether it's Babylon as a country or Elam, they would be distinguished as the Old Testament writers and people
Right.
understood them as similar but distinct.
Okay. Can the spirit of Greece or the prince of Greece from
Yep.
Daniel 10 or the
Yep.
prince of Persia, can they move around a little bit? If their people move, can they move with them, or does that not work?
Oh, I think to a certain degree. Uh, I
Okay.
mean, but as you lock into those beast empires, I would say
Yeah.
no. But their
Okay.
descendants and bloodlines would definitely be moving around
Okay.
with that power. So, I mean, there is a migration aspect over history that we also have to kind of account for. But
Sure.
we also, if we respect the sort of borders that Old Testament prophecy provides for us, we have to still go to the original core.
Okay.
If
So,
that's not too wishy-washy.
okay.
So
No,
when
I understand where you're going.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, we get in Daniel 8, we get the Greek and the Persia empires
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about the beast empires, and
Yep.
some people will use that numerically for the seven empires, which I think it's both that and including Assyria and Egypt into it. I think it's just
Sure.
adding more information as opposed to less, but it gives us a direction from an area of a beast empire for the end time that has some sort of connection back to the Greek Empire in Daniel 8.
I see
But
Daniel
that's a
8.
large region still,
That's a
though.
large region too.
Yeah.
But the two animals fighting. So you've got the goat with the two horns, and you've
Yeah.
got the ram with the single horn fighting,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
goat wins, the shaggy goat, which is
Yes.
interesting in Jewish lore.
Yeah.
So the
Satir is used there as well.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So both animals are clean animals,
Yeah.
and I claim that there will be this battle in the end times of two systems fighting. Both are, we call it tahor in Hebrew, clean animals that could be offered as sacrifices, and
Yeah.
they are, and then the two-horned animal wins out in the end, much stronger, much faster, and probably more satanic, if that makes sense.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And what's also, you could answer, looking at what the Quran puts in there about how they describe Alexander as the two-horned one.
Oh,
Um,
okay,
yeah, and as
okay.
an and they looked at him as an antichrist type figure, or a wannabe, or precursor to. So yeah, you could certainly link that in. And again, that could again represent an east and a west
Kind of an
set of
east-west thing
systems.
too, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So it's a possibility that's going to happen. And ultimately Antichrist comes to power.
right.
And he would, if he's connected to the two horned ones, then that would make sense with what you're saying, because he's going to rule over not so unified world empire in the last three and a
Well, they're
half years. But
unified against the Messiah,
yeah,
Yeshua, but I see the two horns right now. I mean, it could change as being the Muslim faith and the communists. They seem to be working together to defeat everything.
yeah,
I mean, like the election last night in Virginia. I realize you're from Canada, but it was problematic for us because they redistricted from 11 representatives, 10 or five being Republican, six being Democrat, into 10-1. And we looked at that and we said, well, what
yeah,
did they put together? They put together the communists and the Muslims and
yeah,
voted out common sense.
yeah. Well, and typically polytheism is dualistic.
Right.
Good versus evil, white hats versus dark hats.
Yeah.
So that's still a beast empire at that time,
Oh yeah.
as you would reflect that prophetically. So you would have that sort of going on. And you could look at Gog
Yeah.
of being more from, as I talked about it in its reference, more from the east than whoever defeats them. I mean, God is said to defeat them in the Bible, but Antichrist, if he takes credit for that, he'll be from the west.
Now, we've gone along for an hour and a half. We've had a blast. You're wonderful,
Yep.
Gary. I mean, I just love it. But I want to throw a couple of slides at you
Yeah.
just because I want to test you on certain things that are going on in the world today. Once again, he works with Deep River Publishing, and
Yep.
his book just came out. And stated again, it's Optimus. Where is it?
The
It's not even
the Opprimo Conspiracy.
Opprimo. There it is. Thank you.
Yeah.
Gary's showing it right now. So I want everybody to realize that Gary is a happy guy and he has no plans to end anything with his life in the near future like David Wilcock did. And you had never met him, but you have
Yes.
observed his videos. Did you see
Yes.
the most recent one from 2 days ago?
I did not.
He was happy. He was happy.
Yeah.
I mean, life isn't perfect, but there was no reason for him to unalive himself.
Yeah.
So his comment now, he's a little bit different than you and I. We
Yep.
believe in the Bible literally. He's kind of pulling in. Well, you said the mysticism. You call it mythology in your text. Yeah, he's more into the mythology. But anyway, he said you don't get to resurrect. If you lay down your life, you're done. So please don't do that. Please don't be stupid. And then he killed himself, supposedly.
Yeah.
After, I'm sorry I said that word, but
Yeah.
anyway, problems with that. Tell me, Gary, what's up?
Well, it makes no sense, but people who disappear, um, and are working, let's say, at information research or opposed to the world hegemony as they're trying to put together in a new advanced form that we would call world government or the end time empire,
Yep.
they make people disappear, and for all different creative reasons in terms of how that sort of comes about. So when it
They
doesn't make
are. It's
sense,
happening. They're being disappeared.
yes, and it's because they're not helping, or they're doing things that are going to really hurt the narrative for when they come clean on things. And
Oh, so they want to refine their storyline into what they want it to be, not whatever
yeah,
David Wilcox is saying.
yes, and so he would be useful to a certain period of time, but
Wow.
now it's detrimental to the narrative when they start disclosing information. They want to give it to us in a way that we're still left in the dark like mushrooms, right? Because we're the
Wow.
mundane.
Okay.
So it's
But there
part
is a
of the,
rule within
yep,
these bloodlines that they
yes.
have to kind of tell us a little bit about what they're going to do.
Well, and they do. They do it in their entertainment. They do it
Oh,
in
yeah,
their
you're right. Yeah.
literature. They
Yeah.
do it all the time. They've been telling us for thousands of years what they're going to be doing. They have their own end time prophecy. They just have
Sure.
a different outcome.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And
Okay. So,
Alice Bailey, even picked the
oh,
year 2025 for the externalization of the hierarchy in the
oh,
beginning
yeah.
of the entrance of Lord Maitreya. I'm not saying she's correct on that. I'm just saying they have their narrative, and they will do anything to try and hold it and make it look like what they want it to look like. And they're going to have to create a really stupid, that's the wrong thing to say, a really silly thing in ways that most people would say that makes no sense. So you have to brainwash people beforehand to accept the cover story for all of these different beings and things that we're going to be seeing in the not so distant future.
So once again, Gary is happy with his life. He does work on ancient aliens and Genesis 6 things, but he's very happy. So, I mean, but we've got any of the ancient alien type people or the big pharma people, they
Yep.
seem to disappear at times. Karen is still okay, Karen
Yep.
Kingston, but she was disappeared for a period there and then
Yep.
finally came back. Okay, so the other thing is Gary's book is coming out right now, and so he's dealing with AI and Babylon. And guess what? Spielberg is coming out with Disclosure Day, which is good timing for you. I mean, you'll be more popular now than ever before. So Spielberg revealed that the film centered on extraterrestrials, way closer to truth than fiction. Your thoughts, Gary?
Yeah, they're going to create a scenario that's more intergalactic versus interdimensional,
Okay.
which is the standard sort of understanding in polytheism. And we understand interdimensional well through the Bible in terms of
Sure.
heaven being a different dimension, Hades or Sheol being in another dimension.
Sure.
There's the inner earth as well, but there's another dimension sort of to that. So they're going to have to create a story for all of these fallen angels who will be returning,
Okay. Yeah,
all
they
of
have
these,
to. Yeah.
all the different kinds of spurious offspring that they bore before the flood, if any of them survived in the earth, off the earth, or wherever, or they recreated them again after the earth in a second incursion of all sorts of spurious creations, like the elementals in polytheism that have this amazing consistency with the different galactic species they like to show in the alien mythos,
Okay.
and that they have to create a scenario where we're part of this galactic rebellion, as in Star Wars, to use another
Sure.
allegory or
It's
analogy
close
of
to
their
how they're
entertainment.
selling it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And that if we want to sit at the galactic table and fight against the evil dark lord of the universe, now
Right.
using Doctor Strange in some of their
Sure.
allegories,
Sure.
and fight for our freedom, and Earth would be the negotiated settlement, then we're going to have to come together as one or be destroyed from the face of the earth. Either we're going to destroy ourselves from the face of the earth, or God's going to destroy us from the face of the earth again. And they'll distort the Bible and prophecy to make their case that way. And they're here to save us. So they're going to bring technology, they're going to bring knowledge, they're going to promise the world, and they're going to bring the destruction by fire that 2 Peter 3 has reserved for the end time.
And Spielberg is introducing this to us June 12th of 2026. I'm not saying watch the movie, but I am
Yep.
saying watch what they're doing because they're the bright. Well, she only has Emily there only has one eye showed, which is a
Yes.
typical symbol for what they do.
Yes. And there'll be veiled imagery that they're communicating in that
Yeah.
most people won't understand.
Right.
And that's how they get away with hiding things in plain sight and saying, "We told you so." And if you have such a striking sort of image like that imagery of this blue eyed, veiled
Yep.
woman,
Yep.
typically in polytheism, somebody like a Sophia figure or any other queen of heaven that you want to pick
Okay.
that is, and Sophia is a name that's used in AI, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Sophia,
yeah. Well,
the,
there
the,
it is in chapter 17. This takes a mind of Sophia,
yeah,
wisdom, to
yeah,
understand what's going on. Yeah. Okay, so
yes.
let's see if I can get this to flip to the next page. Okay, so this is also interesting, people. CBN News, this guy's name is Billy Hollowell. Nice guy, good guy. He's saying things like this: angels in the Bible, they show up, they deliver a message. They're Malachim, which is messenger bringers, or they're angelos, which is the same thing, messenger bringers, and they leave. They don't stick around. Demons stick around. Any thoughts with that, Gary?
Well, it's partly true, which is the usual story on misinformation and disinformation. They have a little bit
Okay,
of truth in there. So for angels, there's loyal ones and disloyal ones,
sure.
fallen angels and good angels. And so, yes, we have angels from God that come, they deliver messages, they do things, they whatever roles they're provided, and they can be seen, not be seen, recognized, not recognized. And they probably go back as they do to report as they're required to do.
They are,
And
whether they're
yeah,
bad too, because the
yeah, whether
bad
they're
guys
bad
show
or
up.
not. Yeah,
First Kings 22:22. Who's
yeah,
going to be a lying spirit in the mouths of the prophets? And
right.
one moves
Yeah,
forward, and he's a bad guy, but he
yeah,
does it.
yeah. Now, fallen angels, we have many that are in the pit prison. One's from before the flood, one after, some likely after the
Oh yeah,
flood for the crimes
oh
that
yeah.
they did. We would understand them as parent gods, like Kronos, and Gaia as the mother goddess, or you would have El and Ashtaroth, and then offspring gods rule after the flood, like Baal and Anat, and
Okay,
Osiris and
okay, okay. All
his
right.
consort that I won't say because it's a terrorist name,
Okay.
and Zeus and his consorts, and they all disappear as well because they do the same crimes and go to the same pit prison. But other
At
fallen
prison. Okay.
angels who are part of the host, we're told not to worship, Hebrew Saba, meaning, army of angels, rank and
Saba.
order.
Yeah.
Other ones would move up in the council of gods and continue to
Okay.
reign over, that Satan
Okay.
still has control over, just as he showed Jesus all of the empires that he
Jesus
could
didn't
give them.
argue with him and say, "Oh no,
No,
you've got nothing." No,
no, no.
he could offer those things,
Exactly. So they're still here ruling from the council of the gods until the end time is
right?
completed. And so they don't have the same involvement that they did before. You had them walking amongst us
Right?
physically in physical bodies, both
They did.
before and early after the flood, but then restrictions seem to have been put on them. But they're coming back in the end time. So as we get closer, that's the meaning that Bailey is talking about in the externalization of the hierarchy. Hierarchy is Greek for sacred assembly of archons, the council of gods. In
Oh,
this case,
I didn't see Archon and Archie. Oh my goodness! Now okay. There you go. That was
yep,
great. Thank you, Gary. That
right.
saved the whole show. Archon, okay, because the problem is when I talk to the pros that know the Greek language very intimately, and I
Yep.
say, "Tell me what's an archon in Ephesians 6:12," and they go, "Well, he's kind of whatever." And then, "What's a cosmocratorus?" And they go,
Yep.
"I don't know what that is."
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. A ruler is a watcher, is an archon.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know,
Exousias and all those
yeah.
words. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Well,
Okay.
we have a lot of orders that we don't even know what they look like exousia that you're saying in the Greek, like
Exousia, yeah,
dunamis, like
yeah,
Icarus. And there's other
yeah.
ones as well. I mean, we know what seraphim looks like, we know what cherubim looks like, we know what a phanim looks like, we know what an archangel looks like, but these other ones, we don't know.
We don't
What's
know.
that? What's a howling being that's talked about in Isaiah? Is that like a jackal-like head? I mean, we're not given
Is
firm information.
That's weird. That's Isaiah 34 talks about these strange, like Lilith is mentioned in there,
Yes.
and we're going to get to that in a second here. Let's
Yeah.
whoop. We don't need to cover this, but what I want to mention and set it up is that during March, meteors showed up and they were
Yes.
fireballs. And the
Yeah.
problem is, I know guys that are cosmic physics experts. I know a bunch of them. And
Yeah.
for some reason, I've been promoted in with kind of the list of these guys because I do study cosmic physics like you wouldn't believe. So Ben Davidson said, I said there were lots of sightings of either satellites falling or UFOs but they were too slow for meteors. Okay, so they're kind of hanging around in the skies and things like that, and they popped up. You can see the list there from AccuWeather, and I've got another sighting, or another slide to show. This is the American Meteor Society, and they're saying absolutely it was bonkers. The red bar there, huge amounts, and they don't know why, because there wasn't supposed to be a meteor shower in March, but they showed up and they were big and they didn't move like meteors. Okay. And so then we've also got, with Gary's book and everything like that, Tim Burchett is saying, well, we need to have basically an outing, a disclosure statement about what these beings are. They're not fireballs. I mean, they're not meteors, they're fireballs. And I'm arguing, I think it's the next slide. Fallen angels, watchers, inherently exist as a flame of fire, male human forms, or limitless abilities to shapeshift into any animal or object, including serpentine forms. From Dr. Heiser. Your thoughts?
Yes. So seraphim are copper-colored fiery angels. They work before the altar before God,
Sure.
in the coals of fire, and they're copper-colored and serpent-faced. So if they
Sure.
took a physical form and to represent their look, they would have a serpent look, like the Uraeus gods of the Middle East,
Sure.
or and serpent-faced gods, whether it's Quetzalcoatl, and the
Oh, you're
plumed and
right.
feathered
Yes.
serpents,
Oh, you're
dragon
right.
creator gods, Nagas, all around the world. They populate most of the ancient gods. There are other ones as well that would represent, perhaps a cherubim, also associated with fire, but more fiery swords, as I recall. But cherubim have a face of a lion, like Nergal did,
Yep.
or
Yep.
Mahis, right?
Yep.
They also have a face of a human. So when we see Anunnaki reliefs with these dark-haired, uh, big bearded, stocky, winged angels doing this ritual around some sort of technology. Then you see one with a bird's face, or an eagle, or a raven's
Yep.
head. That's another two faces of a cherubim. And then a bull is the other one. So when you see cherubs depicted in antiquity, you have like the lion and the human head of a sphinx in Egypt, for example, or you have the bull of a cherub, which would be, the CH could be easily cherub, as we should be pronouncing it in English. Probably more accurately should be pronounced cherub, not cherub. But again, I'm not sure how the Hebrews would look at that
It's
from
a
the ancient
het, and so
language.
it's going to
Yeah,
be a
yeah,
cherubim. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, similar sound then. Yeah,
Yeah, it's close.
yeah. And you also have these sort of gargoyle type creatures that could be a bird's head as well, that
Yep.
would represent the cherubim. So when they take a physical form, they only take one of those faces. So that's
Okay.
why you see those two scenes of the Anunnaki, one with an eagle head, one with a human's head. And you're saying, well, why is there a different head on the same sort of event or ritual? It's because it's a cherubim. So we want to be aware that these fallen angels, Nephal, I am male plural, Nephilim, fallen ones. You
Nephilim.
don't
Yeah.
technically
Fallen.
get that biblically, but
Yep.
in Isaiah 14, that's when Satan fell.
Yep.
Nephal, I am, put the plural on. There you go.
Yep.
And the ones who followed him. So they're going to be returning, just as
They have to
Alex
return.
Bailey
Yeah.
says it's an externalization of the hierarchy. So we have these ones that are going to be walking amongst us again. So it's going to
Oh
be
yeah.
like the days of Noah, right?
Absolutely.
So now when we look at that, they can take a physical form.
Yeah.
They can also take a physical form or a gender of their choice.
Okay.
So, and we see this in polytheism, for example, like Zeus also often takes the form of a wolf, as he does in the mythos.
Okay.
So they could take different forms if they wanted and make themselves look more of a very advanced Anunnaki type race,
Okay.
which is part of the alien mythos. So look for maybe an angle of a hierarchy of aliens to reflect the hierarchy of the two councils. One of the council of the gods, and in this case, biblically at Mount Hermon,
Sure.
with the Baalim council as the post-Diluvian gods, and the assembly of the Tanu, or Dadanu, as we or probably take that to the Hebrew spelling of it, which is the same as the double T's instead of the double D's as Titans in Greek mythology, or the
Okay.
Tuatha De Danann, that's the same tribes. This was the assembly of the giants. Then these beings, as demonic beings, as they come not only from the pit prison, but want to become more active physically in this world, are going to require Oikatarians. They're going to have to be accounted for in that kind of disclosure,
Yeah.
and a cover story. And all of these other elementals, like the salamanders, which are reptilian beings and taller than humans.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
again, we have them in the mythos. You have the three groups of little ones, of ugly ones, mischievous ones, and good looking ones, and there's multiple in each group as you take that around the world. And these are similar to the ones like the gnomes or the grays that look exactly like a gray, come
Yeah.
through fairy portals and kidnap and do sexual experimentation and all sorts of different things. And if you didn't know it was, and in book one I put two of those fairy abductions of the gray gnomes, um, in the book. And if you didn't know it was a fairy abduction, you'd swear it was a gray alien abduction because it's
Oh yeah.
identical,
Yeah.
right? So look for that as they're going to be represented as intergalactic. So they have to come from the sky to be able to do that versus through the portals. You
It
have to
makes
do
sense.
that.
I looked for the word marome in the text, in the Hebrew text, and so they seem to be the marome region seems to be right at the top of Mount Hermon, all the way up to probably the moon, and they
Yeah.
seem to manage. The Watchers seem to be located in that area.
Yes. And for Christians out there who say, well, you guys are talking about watchers all the time, Daniel 4 has watchers four times,
Watches
goes
four
back
times, four
goes
times.
back to the Hebrew word ayur, meaning to watch, and the watcher angels. So yeah, we're not adding anything to scripture here.
No,
We're
we're not.
talking about, and the
Yeah.
alien mythos uses aliens as watchers, and again, a different hierarchy of these watchers.
And Revelation chapter 9, the fifth trumpet, describes some creatures, I'll call them egregores, you can call them whatever you want to, popping up from underneath the earth, the abyss, so to speak, and it
Yeah.
opens up, and one of them's a king. And then the second part of that has 200 million coming up from the Euphrates River, and
Yep.
they're monstrous type beings. And then Revelation 12 says the heavens are going to open up, and Satan's going to be cast out, and 1/3 of the angels will come with him. And there will be so many uh, strange beings popping up over the next umpteen years. I wanted to cite this because I wanted to get your opinion on this, and this is my last slide. Mexican pyramid gunmen wanted to recreate temple's dark history of human sacrifice 1,500 years ago. New York Post. You can see him there with his gun, and he shot a Canadian, which is too bad.
Yep.
And so, what I'm getting at with this is that this guy showed up at one of the high points, one of the worship places,
Yeah.
the high places we call it in the Bible. And so I'm stating that, according to what I'm thinking, some fallen angels arrived in March of 2026, and they're appearing as UFO type fireballs in our skies. The fireballs move too slowly to be meteors. Has evil entered the high places, worldwide places like Mount Hermon in First Enoch? And are they coming back to rest in the high places until things get going with God and he does the great showdown? What do you think?
The answer is yes. It's just a
Okay.
matter of how that sort of plays out. So Mount Hermon would be probably either one of seven or the eighth. It could be the main because it seems to cross some um, cultures and history. So like Nippur is located where the cedar forest is. It's talking about
Okay.
Mount Hermon there
Right.
in the Sumerian text. But polytheism also has seven sacred mountains also around the world.
Sure.
So you could have eight, because eight's also a number of polytheism, and understand that
Sure.
Satan sits above the council of the gods,
Yep.
right? So you could have that being represented in seven holy mountains, and then buildings that were built in pyramids or mountain forms, ziggurats, towers, or mountains, would also be part of a connection to a larger mountain, not necessarily there, but elsewhere. That would be another, let's put it as a branch location of that polytheism. So I think you're going to see the holy mountains become very well known
Yes.
as ancient places of technology, as ancient places of worship, which we already
Yep.
sort of take it
Yep.
as,
It'll be that
but
merger of
also
technology and worship. Yes.
and also places of intergalactic or interdimensional travel or both. So
Portals.
if you,
Just say
yes,
portals and we're done. Yeah.
portals and we're done. And so look at the Akkadian meaning to Babalu in their version of the
Portal.
Babel story.
Yep.
Yeah, it means ILU as a transliteration for EL or a god,
Yep.
and Bab as in a gateway or a portal.
Gateway. Gateway
And
of the
so all
gods.
of a sudden now you're thinking, well, maybe Nimrod was trying to go interdimensionally into heaven to war with
Yes.
God, as is reserved for the Antichrist, or go
Sure.
into the other world and release the gods out of the pit prison, which also happens in the end time in Revelation 9. But Antichrist in Daniel 8 is reserved for going into heaven at the midpoint of the last 7 years after the pit prison is open. So, and again, one wonders as that connection back to CERN and the AI
They're
matching up
opening
with
up
quantum
portals,
computing to
Gary.
go to another dimension. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Oh my. Okay, so we're in the end times. We're in the birth pangs, I would say. We're not, I
Yes.
mean, Yeshua isn't returning tomorrow or anything
No.
like that. So, what we want to be is good little witnesses for the Father and the Son and his Spirit. And so, Gary, this was exciting. So list your books one more time. Let me come back to your screen and give you the full screen here. So list your books so people can find you and find your books again.
Yeah. So the one that's in the dark brown in the background there is called, that's book one, that's the Genesis 6 Conspiracy, How Secret Societies and the Descendants of Giants Plan to Enslave Humankind.
Yep.
And it is literally a 6,000 year connect the dots investigation
Yep.
into the house of dragon, the spurious offspring of the sons of God that's talked about in Genesis 6, and their plan to originally was to ensure humankind did not reach our destiny, and would be wiped from the face of earth and remembered no more. And of course, that comes to an end with the resurrection of Jesus in First Corinthians, because the archons, the rulers, didn't know about the resurrection. So otherwise, they wouldn't have had Jesus crucified. So that is a book that sort of goes, even though it's written from a Christian biases, it's also designed to have people give the Bible another look, because it's a book about how the Bible's history interconnects with polytheist history throughout the earth. But everything is, I'll talk about, I'll distinguish in the book what is the polytheist versions and let them talk in their own words. And here's what the Bible says, because I always measure everything against what the Bible says. Book two is entitled The Genesis 6 Conspiracy Part 2, which I said I never would write because I didn't want to be redundant. So until I figured out how to do that. But people wanted me to do that same type of research that I did, but apply it to the Bible and go deeper than anybody else did. So book two is entitled The Genesis 6 Conspiracy, How Understanding Prehistory and Giants Helps to Define End Time Prophecy. And it's for Christians, book one on steroids, because it goes
Sure.
deeper into the languages and into passages people really haven't looked at, and recreates that whole prehistory and connects it to end time prophecy. And it's also Dr. Heiser on steroids. So if you
Oh,
like the work
good.
that
I
he
love
did,
Heiser.
yeah,
Nobody
it
else does,
goes,
but I love Heiser.
yeah, it goes beyond Dr. Heiser. So,
Okay.
like I'll even get when he's talking about, Deuteronomy 32 and Israel, he never gets into it that Israel is a compound word. So what I'm going to do is define that as Sarah and El and give you the definitions, and all of a sudden it doesn't matter whether you're looking at um, the Masoretic text or you're looking at the Aramaic text or the Septuagint. It's all talking about the same group of beings. So just makes sense when you just dig a little bit deeper on that. And then the Opprimo Conspiracy is a nonfiction about how the end time might take place from our vantage point today, and as we're projecting
You mean it's
using
it's
my
fiction, Gary? It's
it's
fiction, right?
fiction. It's
Yeah, it
fiction,
is
yes.
fiction. You said
But
nonfiction, but it's fiction. Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's fiction. If I didn't say that, I want to be clear, it's fiction. But I do use my research on display in this book. And Bill Carmichael's the novelist, so he does the characters, and I do all
Oh,
the
good.
research
Okay.
and the
Sure.
eschatology, and that's how we combine on it. And so what we do is we give the main particularly the evil ones. We give them names that are Google and research worthy. We give the locations, research worthy locations. We bring in ancient bloodlines like Elias Vilak is the one we set up as the rising false prophet who is creating AI, and the Opprimo wall, which is that angelic intelligence for
Okay.
AI. Just using a different sort of acronym for that when I use AI. And so this is the Opprimo wall technology that they're going to bring in for the Babylon system that Antichrist will take to a whole new level. So we're going to take his bloodline back to multiple ways. In book one, we take him back to Petra and the Amalekim giants and the Amalekite curse.
Wonderful.
But,
We covered it all.
but
What?
obviously, as a prophet, there's another bloodline or two coming in for book two. That
And
would
people, all
Sion
of
have
these
wrapped
things are
into.
happening now as we move along in the end times. What Gary's talking about and researching is actually applying even better now than 10 years ago when he wrote some of these books. So,
well, yeah, that's the crazy thing. And I wanted to write book one not to be a 1 year wonder or a 6 month wonder. So it sells more books every year
it
and
does.
resonates
I
more every
noticed
year with
that.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's selling better now because it applies even better now.
Yes.
Cool. It's 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. It's 9 o'clock. God bless you, Gary. Thank you for jumping on the show and imparting so much wisdom. People, pick up his books. They're wonderful books. Thank you and good night. And God bless. Gary, anything to say at the end here?
Oh, no, thank you for being such a wonderful host. I just love getting on shows where people have their own research, and of course we have our own conclusions on
Oh,
some
yeah.
things, but that's the beauty of it for the audience, is you get to see 2 or 3 different sides of an issue, and it helps you decide. And what you want to do is learn and learn more and know why you believe what you believe.
Yes. Okay. Good night and God bless. Gary, stay on.